I could feel my heartbeat echoing in my ears as I tightened the thrift store dress I had bought for $20. Intentionally plain, intentionally forgettable. Tonight I wasn't Sophia Bennett, the silent heiress, the woman who owned more assets than my fiancé's parents could imagine. Tonight I was nobody. That was the point. Because at the dinner with my fiancé's rich parents, I wanted to see how they treated a woman they believed had nothing. No pedigree, no wealth, no status. Ethan thought I was just nervous. He had no idea the entire evening was a test, a quiet trap I had set, not for him, but for the people who would soon become my in-laws. And I was right to prepare. From the moment I stepped into their mansion, their eyes sharpened, their smiles thinned, and their judgment cut deeper than any knife. What they didn't know was that I could destroy or save their entire legacy with a single decision. The moment Ethan and I pulled up to the Whitmore estate, I understood exactly what kind of battlefield I was walking into. Their mansion towered over us, white stone, iron gates, trimmed hedges cut sharper than their eventual comments. Ethan squeezed my hand gently. "Don't be nervous," he whispered. If only he knew. The front doors opened before we even reached them. Victoria Whitmore, icy blue eyes, flawless hair, pearls that probably cost more than most people's cars, stood waiting like a queen granting an audience. "Ethan," she greeted, kissing her son's cheek. Then her gaze shifted to me. A pause, a blink, a full body scan. And this must be Sophia. She didn't offer a hug, not even a handshake. Her smile was polite, politely dismissive. Charles Whitmore joined her, tall and rigid, his suit pressed with military precision. "Welcome," he said, but his tone suggested the exact opposite. "Ethan tells us you work in administration?" "Yes," I replied calmly. "Just helping with daily operations." Victoria tilted her head. "A humble job, admirable." The way she stretched the word humble made it sound more like pitiful. We walked into the dining room. The table alone could seat 20 people, though tonight only 4 chairs were prepared. Crystal glasses, gold-trimmed plates, a chandelier dripping light like diamonds. Every inch of this place screamed legacy, power, ego. I took my seat beside Ethan. Victoria sat across from me, posture perfect, chin lifted as if gravity did not apply to her. "So, Sophia," she began, "tell us about your background, where your family comes from, what they do." A classic opening move. The social resume test. "I grew up outside Boston," I said. "Nothing remarkable." Victoria smiled thinly. "I see." Translation. "Not good enough." Charles added. "Ethan mentioned you don't come from a business family. It must have been quite an adjustment, being around people like us." Ethan frowned. "Dad, that's unnecessary." "Oh, I'm simply making conversation," he replied, slicing into his food. "We want to understand the woman our son is marrying." I folded my hands politely. "I understand completely." Victoria leaned forward slightly. "And what are your long-term goals, dear? People from modest backgrounds usually prioritize stability. Do you plan to continue working as an assistant?" Her tone wrapped the title in velvet-coated disdain. I smiled softly. "I suppose it depends on the opportunities I find." Victoria exchanged a glance with Charles. A silent judgment passed instantly. To them, I was a poor girl clinging to their wealthy son, aiming upward instead of staying in my lane. Inside, I felt a spark of amusement. Let them think that. Every insult sharpened the reveal I was saving for later. This dinner wasn't meant to welcome me. It was meant to measure me. But they had no idea the ruler they were using belonged to me. Dinner had barely settled into a rhythm when the subtle jabs turned into open probing. "So, Sophia?" Charles began, swirling his wine. "I assume your family isn't financially involved in anything significant?" I lifted my glass slowly. "No, nothing significant." A half-truth. My family was not involved in finance because we owned the firms that shaped it. Victoria dabbed her lips with a linen napkin. "I'm sure it must feel overwhelming entering a family with legacy, reputation, and expectations." Ethan tensed beside me. "Mom, she's not overwhelmed. She's perfectly capable." Victoria smiled sweetly. "Of course she is, darling. I just meant that certain circles require a certain upbringing." Ah, and there it was. Certain circles. The phrase rich families used when they wanted to say, "You're not one of us." Still, I kept my expression pleasant, serene, almost naive, exactly what they expected from me. When Ethan excused himself to take a work call, I politely asked to use the restroom. Victoria pointed down the hall with all the warmth of a hotel concierge who didn't want trouble. I stepped into the hallway, only to hear their voices spill from the half-closed study door. Victoria's whisper was sharp enough to cut glass. "She's sweet, but honestly, Charles, Ethan deserves better." Charles sighed. "We can't allow him to marry someone with no status. What would the board think? The shareholders?" "Exactly," Victoria said. "He needs someone who fits. Someone like Madeline Carter, Harvard, old money, well-connected. That girl is everything Sophia isn't." I leaned against the wall, expression freezing for a moment, not from hurt, but from confirmation. They weren't just judging me, they were planning. "We'll talk to him tonight," Victoria continued. "He listens to us. Once he realizes she can't offer anything, no wealth, no network, he'll let her go." Charles agreed. "It's for his future. She's not wife material for a Whitmore." I almost laughed aloud. If only they knew the truth. If only they knew that Bennett Holdings, my company, was in negotiations to quietly acquire a division of Whitmore Enterprises. Not because we needed it, but because they did. I waited until their voices softened, then walked past the door deliberately so they'd know I was returning. Victoria smiled politely as I sat back down at the table. "Everything fine, dear?" "Oh, yes," I said, smiling just as politely. "I didn't miss anything important, did I?" She shook her head confidently. "Not at all. If she only knew. This wasn't just a dinner anymore. It was a stage. And they had just written their own downfall into the script." When I returned to the dining room, Ethan had just finished his call and smiled warmly at me. But his parents? Their smiles were knives. Victoria folded her hands elegantly. "So, Sophia, while you were gone, we were just discussing Ethan's future. Big plans. Very big." Ethan chuckled nervously. "Mom, please don't overwhelm her." "Oh, darling," she replied sweetly. "I'm simply being realistic." Then she turned to me. "Tell me, dear, have you thought about what you could contribute to Ethan's life long-term?" I blinked slowly. "What do you mean?" Her answer sliced the air. "Well, stability, financial wisdom, social connections, things a spouse should bring into a marriage." Charles added, "Marriage isn't just about feelings. It's a partnership, a business alliance, in many ways." I felt Ethan stiffen beside me. "Dad, for the last time, this is ridiculous. You don't talk to people like that." Victoria ignored him entirely. "Ethan has responsibilities, expectations from the board, from our family name." Then she delivered the next blow. "And frankly, Sophia, you come from a simpler world. You wouldn't understand the demands." I set my fork down. "I see." But she wasn't done. "You're kind," she continued, "and I do believe Ethan cares for you. But caring isn't enough. He needs someone on his level." Ethan erupted. "Mom, stop talking about her like she's some charity case." Charles raised his hand calmly. "We're just stating facts. There's nothing wrong with being ordinary, Sophia. But our son isn't." "Ordinary. How amusing." I stayed quiet, not because their words hurt, but because their arrogance was the match I needed to light the fire. Victoria leaned back, confident she had put me in my place. "In fact," she said casually, "the Carters have reached out. Their daughter, Madeline, will be in town next week. Her family is excited about meeting ours." The implication hit the table like a grenade. Ethan slammed his fist down, not hard, not violent, just enough to rattle the silverware. "What does that even mean? Are you trying to replace Sophia? Are you serious right now?" Victoria sighed dramatically. "Darling, we're simply offering you options for your future." I placed a gentle hand on Ethan's arm. "It's fine," I whispered. "Let them speak." Because every word they said would make my revelation later hit harder, cleaner, sharper. Victoria's eyes glittered. "You're sweet, Sophia, truly. But sweetness doesn't last in our world." I smiled softly. "And are you sure you understand your world as well as you think?" She frowned. "What does that mean?" "Oh," I said, lifting my glass calmly. "You'll know soon enough." That was the moment the room shifted. Just slightly. As if the walls themselves braced for what was coming. The tension at the table grew thick enough to cut with a knife. Ethan tried to steer the conversation back to something neutral, but Victoria and Charles were relentless. "So, Sophia," Charles began, "do you have any long-term financial plans? Investments? Retirement accounts?" I met his gaze steadily. I manage my finances responsibly. Victoria pursed her lips. But surely, on an assistant's salary, you must be limited. Ethan nearly choked. Mom, what? She asked innocently. We're simply having an honest conversation. And is the same desire to space. It wants, letting in the same. Then her tone sharpened. We just want to ensure our son doesn't end up burdened. Burdened. A word rich people used when they feared marrying down. I forced a polite smile. I assure you, I've never been a burden to anyone. Victoria gave a brittle laugh. Oh, darling, you don't have to pretend. Everyone starts somewhere. I tilted my head. And where did you start, Mrs. Whitmore? Her face stiffened clearly, not used to being questioned. Ethan shot me a worried glance, but I squeezed his hand secretly. I've got this. Charles cleared his throat. We're not discussing us. We're discussing suitability, compatibility. And suitability, Victoria added, isn't just about affection. It's about social standing, contribution, and the kind of family our son marries into. Ah, there it was. The sentence wealthy families rehearsed for moments like this. But then she leaned closer, voice lower, colder, deadlier. You seem like a lovely girl. But let's be realistic, you don't come from much. You can't offer our son the lifestyle he deserves. And love, well, love fades. I let the silence stretch for a few seconds. Then I spoke quietly, but clearly. Mrs. Whitmore, it feels like you've decided who I am before even knowing me. Victoria shrugged. We can't afford to take risks with our son's future. The wrong marriage can cost a family everything. Everything? If only she knew how ironic that sounded. Ethan leaned forward. Sophia is not a risk. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Charles shook his head. Son, she may be sweet, but she brings nothing to the table, no assets, no connections, no value that a Whitmore marriage requires. It is getting mater. My jaw tightened, but I didn't let it show. Ethan was trembling with rage. Dad, he said, voice shaking. If you say one more thing like that. I placed my hand gently on his arm again. It's okay, Ethan. Then I turned to his parents, letting my tone soften to something deceptively calm. So to be clear, your main issue with me is that you think I'm poor and unconnected? Victoria nodded without hesitation. Well, yes. We need someone worthy of our son. I smiled. A slow, deliberate smile. The kind that appears when the checkmate is already set. Well, I said quietly. Thank you for being honest. They had no idea those exact words would become the reason their entire world would flip upside down before dessert was served. A thick, almost electric silence settled over the table after Victoria admitted the truth so casually. That I wasn't worthy. That I had nothing to offer. That my existence was a poor fit for their legacy. Ethan looked like he was seconds away from walking out. But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was ready. I placed my fork down gently and straightened in my chair, my voice steady as silk. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore, I began. You've made your values very clear tonight. So allow me to be equally honest with all due respect. Victoria lifted her chin, amused. Oh, and what truth do you wish to share, dear? I folded my hands slowly. Well, you asked earlier about my financial plans, savings, and what I could contribute to Ethan's life. Charles sighed. Yes, it's important to know whether a spouse can support a family's vision. I smiled faintly. I completely agree. Their expressions briefly relaxed, thinking I was about to apologize or justify myself. I was not. Let me start with my job, I said calmly. I told you I work in administration. That's true, but you assumed the wrong kind of administration. Victoria frowned. What do you mean? I opened my purse, pulled out my phone, and laid it gently on the table. I didn't want to bring this up tonight. I came here hoping to be judged for my character, not my resume. But since you insist on evaluating suitability, I think it's time you knew exactly who I am. With a swipe, I opened a document, then turned the screen toward them. At the top was a formal letterhead. Bennett Holdings Consolidated Shareholder Report. Under it, a signature block. Sophia A. Bennett, Principal Owner and Director. Victoria blinked rapidly. I'm sorry. This must be a joke. No, I replied softly. It isn't. Charles leaned forward, stunned. Bennett? As in Bennett Holdings? The private conglomerate? The one acquiring mid-sized tech and logistics firms across the country? Yes. I met his eyes without flinching. My family built it. I currently oversee 4 subsidiaries. We maintain full privacy, but we control assets worth several billion. The room froze. Even the chandelier light felt still. Ethan stared at me, shock mixing with awe. Sophia, why didn't you tell me? I reached for his hand. Because I wanted to know you loved me for who I am, not for the company I run. His eyes softened, but his parents were still frozen. Then I delivered the part they never expected. Oh, and one more thing, I added, tapping the screen. Bennett Holdings owns 18% of Whitmore Enterprises, your company. Victoria gasped. What? Charles's face drained of color. That's impossible. Those shares were purchased anonymously. Yes, I said gently. By me. Silence cracked across the table. I continued, my tone respectful yet unyielding. You judged me tonight based on the assumption that I had nothing, that I was beneath your son, that I couldn't contribute to your legacy. I leaned in slightly. But the truth is, your legacy is partially mine. I've helped stabilize Whitmore Enterprises during 3 market downturns. I've sat quietly in board meetings under an alias, and I've protected your company more than you ever knew. Victoria covered her mouth, trembling. My goodness. Charles swallowed, voice thin. You're the investor we've been trying to meet for months. Yes, I answered. And you nearly destroyed the relationship your son treasures because you mistook humility for inadequacy. Ethan squeezed my hand, pride shining in his eyes. I looked at his parents one last time. You wanted someone worthy of your son. I gave a small, controlled smile. Congratulations. You got far more than you bargained for. The chandelier flickered. The room felt lighter, no longer suffocating. Because the game had shifted, and for the first time that night, I was no longer the guest being judged. I was the one in control. For a long moment, no one spoke. Victoria stared at the screen as if it were a live grenade. Charles rubbed his temples, processing the reality that the assistant girl he had belittled was, in fact, the silent investor keeping his entire legacy afloat. Finally, Victoria whispered, We didn't know. Sophia, we never would have spoken that way if we— I raised a hand gently. Please don't say, if we had known. That's exactly the problem. She froze. My voice remained calm, but every word landed with purpose. You should treat people with respect, regardless of what you know about their bank accounts. Victoria's eyes glistened. Sophia, you're right. Charles swallowed, his tone suddenly fragile. We judged you unfairly. We were blinded by our expectations. Ethan looked from them to me, then softly said, I'm sorry you had to hear all that. You didn't deserve any of it. I smiled at him warmly, sincerely. I know. You've never treated me the way they did. But his parents weren't finished. Victoria straightened, trying to regain composure. So, all this time, you watched us evaluate you like— She couldn't finish the sentence. Like a potential asset? I said gently. Or liability? Their silence was answer enough. Charles cleared his throat, a flicker of panic crossing his face. Sophia, your investment in Whitmore Enterprises, your involvement with our company is vitally important. If we've jeopardized that relationship in any way, we want to make amends, truly. Ah, there it was. The shift. From arrogance to fear, from judgment to pleading. But I didn't blame them. Life had a funny way of humbling people. I spoke carefully, choosing every word with precision. What concerns me isn't your business. It isn't your company. It's Ethan. Ethan's grip tightened around my hand. Victoria leaned forward. We understand. We hurt you. But please, let us explain. We were trying to protect him. Protect him from what? I asked. From someone who didn't match your checklist? Victoria winced. Charles said quietly, we wanted to ensure he married someone who could support his future, someone who wouldn't drag our family down. I exhaled slowly. Mr. Whitmore, let me be extremely clear. I don't need your money. I don't need your approval. And nothing about being with Ethan elevates my life. Ethan looked at me with stunned affection. Sophia, thank you. Charles looked devastated, but he nodded. You're right. We were wrong. Completely wrong. And we're ashamed. Victoria reached across the table, voice trembling. We would like a second chance to know you, truly know you, not the image we assumed. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I pulled another document from my purse, a thin, neatly folded contract. Legal, official. Charles's eyes widened. Is that? Yes, I said calmly. The shareholder protection agreement. Victoria gasped softly. Are you pulling out of Whitmore Enterprises? I held her gaze. No, not unless you continue treating people the way you treated me tonight. They both sagged in relief. This isn't about revenge, I continued. It's about boundaries, respect, and accountability. Charles nodded vigorously. We understand. We do. And we will prove it. Victoria wiped her eyes. Sophia, if you allow us, we want to rebuild this relationship. Properly. I finally softened. I'm willing to give you a chance. But this time, I expect honesty, kindness, and fairness toward me and toward anyone Ethan loves. Both parents nodded fervently. Ethan leaned closer, whispering, I'm proud of you. I whispered back, I know. In that moment, power wasn't the point. What mattered was clarity and change. Tonight, the Whitmores didn't just see who I really was. They saw who they needed to become. The air felt different after the tension settled lighter, but still trembling. Victoria sat straighter in her chair, not with arrogance this time, but with something that looked like humility, a foreign expression on her perfectly sculpted face. She exhaled shakily. Sophia, I owe you an apology. A real one. I didn't respond, allowing the moment to unfold naturally. She continued, voice soft, unfamiliar. I reacted based on fear. Fear that Ethan would end up hurt, or worse, stuck with someone who couldn't support him. I see now that the only person hurting him tonight was me. Charles nodded. And me. We built our lives on the belief that the right marriage could secure our legacy. But we focused so much on business, we forgot what love is supposed to look like. Ethan looked at his parents, surprised and maybe, for the first time in years, hopeful. Victoria turned toward me. We aren't proud of how we treated you, but we want to make it right. Not because of your wealth or influence, because of who you are to our son. I felt a slow warmth rise in my chest. After the battle, after the cruelty, hearing this sincerity mattered more than I expected. But the real twist came when Victoria suddenly reached into a drawer beside her seat and pulled out a small velvet box. My eyebrows lifted. What's that? She hesitated before opening it. Inside lay a delicate sapphire bracelet. Elegant, antique, clearly valuable. But that wasn't what shocked me. Victoria whispered. This belonged to Ethan's grandmother. She wanted her future granddaughter-in-law to have it someday. I refused to give it to anyone for years because I was wrong about what worthy meant. A warm tension surged through the room. Ethan blinked. Mom, are you serious? She nodded, eyes shining with remorse. If Sophia will accept it. I didn't reach for the bracelet. Instead, I asked quietly, Mrs. Whitmore, are you offering this to me or to Bennett Holdings? The question struck deep intentionally. Victoria sucked in a breath. No, to you, Sophia. You. Not the company you run. Not the money behind your name. Just you. Her voice cracked. I want my future daughter-in-law to know she is welcome, truly welcome. This was the shift I had waited for, not fear, not calculation, but understanding. I closed the box gently. I accept your apology. And I'll accept this bracelet when I believe you see me as family, not a transaction. Victoria nodded. That's fair. Then, unexpectedly, Charles spoke with genuine vulnerability. You remind me of Ethan's grandmother, he said. She married into wealth but came from nothing, and she changed this family for the better. Perhaps this is history repeating itself. This time, I smiled. A real one. The kind that comes only when walls begin to fall. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table, relief flooding his features. When dessert arrived, a crème brûlée Victoria had carefully chosen, the atmosphere had transformed completely. No more judgment, no more tension, just honest effort. Victoria even laughed softly. I have a feeling you'll teach us a lot, Sophia. And I have a feeling, I replied, that we'll meet in the middle just fine. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't immediate. But it was a start. For the first time all night, the Whitmores didn't look like titans of industry. They looked like people, flawed, human, trying, and that, more than any confession, felt like victory. If someone had told me earlier that I'd leave the Whitmore mansion feeling lighter, not heavier, I wouldn't have believed them. Yet as dessert plates were cleared and the night drew to a close, Something had genuinely shifted. Victoria and Charles didn't transform into perfect people overnight, but they did something rarer. They learned. They listened. And for the first time, they saw me. Not the version of me they created in their minds. As we walked toward the front door, Victoria paused. "Sophia," she said gently, "may we take you out next week? Just the two of us? No evaluations, no tests. I'd like to know you." Her eyes were sincere. "Of course," I said softly. "I'd like that too." Outside, the night air was cool and quiet. Ethan took my hand as we walked down the steps, his thumb brushing my knuckles. "I'm so proud of you," he murmured. "I didn't do anything extraordinary," I replied. "Yes, you did. You stood up for yourself with grace, and you didn't let them change who you are." I leaned my head against his shoulder. "And you didn't waver. That's why this worked." He smiled, stopping beneath the old oak tree near their driveway. "You know," he said, voice low, "I'd planned to wait until next month, but tonight feels right." Before I could question him, he pulled a small box from his pocket, no velvet flair, no grandeur, just a simple ring nestled inside. "Sophia Bennett," he whispered. "Not because of your last name, not because of what you own, not because of anything you revealed tonight, but because of the woman you are. Will you marry me?" The world stilled around us. Not the mansion, not the assets. Just him. Just us. "Yes," I breathed. 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger and pulled me into his arms. For a moment, nothing else existed. Not the past doubts, not the judgment, not even my carefully hidden identity. Just the truth we had built together. Later that week, we returned to the Whitmore estate for dinner again, but this time, something was different. Victoria greeted me at the door with a genuine smile. Charles offered to pull out my chair. And over dinner, there were no tests, no subtle jabs, only conversation, curiosity, and effort. Even the sapphire bracelet, the heirloom I had refused, returned to the table. This time, I accepted it. Not because of wealth or status, but because it came with sincerity. Months passed, and we planned a wedding that wasn't about legacy or power. No lavish ballrooms, no multi-million-dollar displays. Just a sunlit garden, close friends, our family's mine, large and warm. His, humbled and growing. Victoria gave a toast that surprised everyone. We once believed we knew what makes someone worthy. But Sophia taught us that true worth is character, strength, and kindness. We're grateful she didn't give up on us. And as I stood there, holding Ethan's hand, I realized the truth. I hadn't just changed their minds. They had changed their hearts. Our life together wasn't built on money or alliances, though we certainly had both. It was built on honesty, mutual respect, and the courage to face uncomfortable truths. Some say wealth shows who people really are, but I know better. It's humility that reveals character, and love that keeps it alive.